Om Gyantimirandasya Gyananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutaha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Shude Devi Pranamami Haripriye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo Rama Ramo Hare 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 Krishna. We'd like to welcome all of you all to this Bhagavad Gita course. So today we're going to be doing a very interesting session where I will be sharing with you all some insights into the most fundamental and foundational aspect of the Gita. This concept that Krishna has introduced in the beginning of the Gita is revolutionary, and it actually helps us look at life and its priorities in a completely different way. So what we're going to be doing today is like a deep dive into some of our own fears. Of course, we will start with Arjun's fears. The Gita is, all our scriptures in that sense are so interesting that they talk about somebody else's problem. And while telling the story of somebody else's problem, they're actually addressing our problems. And they're actually talking about the story of our life. So, the Gita begins, the last time we had done a small introduction to the Bhagavad Gita to help us understand what is the perspectives behind why we need to study the Gita. And today we're going to actually start studying the Gita. What I'm going to do is like a small summary of the second chapter of the Gita. Not exactly the second chapter, maybe the first 35 verses of the second chapter of the Gita. And help you understand a very unique way of looking at life. I hope all of you are ready and enthusiastic to dive in and absorb yourself, more importantly. The Bhagavad Gita begins with Krishna bringing Arjun in front of Bhishma and Drona. Arjun was in front of the army of the Kauravas, but while he was there, he told Krishna, take me in between the two armies. And obviously, Krishna could have taken him anywhere in front of between the two armies. He had the chariot in his hand, he could control where to take. But specifically, Krishna took Arjun in front of Bhishma and Drona. Bhishma and Drona represent two of life's greatest problems. One is the emotional connection, and one is a professional connection. Most human beings struggle in these two aspects of life. One is their professional connections, and second is their emotional connections, right? Bhishma represents his emotional connection. Bhishma was his grandfather. And Drona represents his professional connection. He was his guru, teacher. Everything he learned professionally about martial arts and the art of war, he learned from Drona. And here are two of the most important people of his life whom he has to face. Bhishma represents affection. So when you have people in your life whom you are affectionate towards, it inspires you. Drona represents achievements. So when you have people in your life who help you achieve things, achievements define you. So now, Arjuna, he was very confused. He wanted to please Bhishma, because you try to please those whom you are affectionate towards, right? And sometimes that causes problems. Because when you are trying to emotionally please, when you have an emotional connection with someone, and you want to please that person at any cost, what all a human being can go through. That's technically called emotional blackmailing, that's technically called so many things which psychology defines. Just to please that person, people go to any extent. To the extent that they forget themselves and who they are and what their real identity is, what their duty is. And the second thing is, some people are not so much connected the affection side. They are not so much connected with the emotional side, but they are very connected with their professional side. They like to be practical. They like to be. They like to achieve a lot. And because the profession sometimes gives you a sense of identity. A lot of people, you ask them, who are you? In all probability, they will talk about their profession only. So much of our identity comes from our profession, isn't it? So much of our identity comes from the person who gives us success or helps us achieve success. And therefore, when Arjun was brought in front of Bhishma and Drona, he was totally shocked and bewildered, confused, because those two identities of our life take us away from who we really are. We are neither the emotional aspect nor the achievement aspect. We are something much more. We are not just professionals. We are not just emotional beings. We are much more. So when Arjun was brought in front of Bhishma and Drona, Krishna, he wanted Arjun to confront both. Find our real identity, which is beyond our emotional identity and which is beyond our professional identity. And that's when Arjun realized, all I know is only these two things, Bhishma and Drona. For all of us, we also have a Bhishma and Drona in our lives. And sometimes the Bhishma and Drona in our lives are in conflict with who we really are. When a Bhishma and Drona is in conflict with who we really are, and you have to fight the Bhishma and Dronas of our life, that's when you realize, I'm not equipped. Arjun, he was not ready to face, and he wanted to run away. He dropped his weapons. He got scared. Can someone reduce the AC, please? I'm really shivering too much. So, Arjun was not at all ready to face Bhishma and Drona. Normally, when we are made to face something that we are not ready to face, what we do? The normal route that a human being takes when it's confronted with his fears, he runs away, escape. That's why in today's world, relationships are crumbling so fast, because escaping is easy. Handling our fears is not easy. So Arjun was not ready to face, and he was running away. Finally, with all his confusion, with all his intelligence, and with all his analysis, he tries his best and he realizes, I can't figure it out. And then he begs Krishna for wisdom. He had two choices. He could either beg, not fight, and beg. Live a life of begging. That's what he originally thought of. The second option was, instead of choosing to beg, he chose to beg Krishna for wisdom. The Bhagavad Gita begins at that context. The most intelligent person in the world at that point in time, the most successful person in the world at that point in time, the person who had the best of relationship at that point in time, he realized, I'm confused and I don't know what to do. And he had the humility to ask questions. He had the humility to beg for wisdom. Unfortunately, if you look at our own lives, we are super confused guys, just like Arjun, professionally and personally. Most of our lives are messed up professionally and personally. Most people are doing jobs that they hate. Most people are working for bosses that they don't like at all. Most people are running after, chasing after achievements and goals that are very vague, undefined. That's what world society tells them. This is what you should achieve. And we are all in that rat race. And in the middle of all that, neither are we personally satisfied. Most people live in broken families. Most people have complicated relationships. And in today's world, it's getting worse and worse. Situationships, live-in relationships, and much more complicated, names of relationships turning out. Why? It's simply because it's a mess, right? So, in such a context, when we know that we are confused, Arjun was fighting a war, right? We are also fighting our own wars. Arjun's war was outside, our war is inside. Arjun was standing on a battlefield with weapons. We are also trying to protect ourselves, wearing some kavach, some random things, to protect ourselves. And we're fighting a war inside. The only difference is Arjun had the guts to ask Krishna and beg for wisdom. Most of us don't even do that. Of course, even if you want to do that, we don't know whom to go to. We don't know who is the Krishna in our life, to go and ask. But the fact is that all of us are exactly like Arjun and we need an answer. So Krishna here, in this chapter of the Gita, he begins by giving us some answers. And what we're going to be discussing today is very interesting because it is radically different from the Western way of looking at life. So the Western idea of life is life has a start, it has an end. All Abrahamic religions in this world, it always talks about a start and an end. The Vedic idea of life is there is no start and there is no end. The moment you say you have a start and an end, the whole goal of life, our whole purpose of life is to achieve. Because I have only one life. And in this one life, I want to achieve so much. And of course, the Western way of looking at life is why we are suffering in this world? Because we have disobeyed God. And because we have disobeyed God, we are all suffering. The Vedic idea of life is that there is no one else to blame except yourself. In the Western world, Western concept of life, when people suffer, they want to blame someone or somebody. They want to blame society, they want to blame government, they want to blame God, they want to blame someone. But in the Vedic culture, we are taught, the Bhagavad Gita, this is a fundamental teaching of the Gita is, you are responsible for your own suffering. What you are suffering today is because of the choices you have made in the past. And what choices you're going to make today is going to determine whether you're going to suffer in the future. So the moment we look at life as endless, no start and no end, it gives us a very different perspective of looking at life. So the Vedic idea gives us acceptance of the present. Whatever situation of life we are in, it allows us to accept it. And it makes us responsible for the future. We know that the choices I'm going to make today are going to determine my future suffering or my future joy. So therefore, Krishna is telling Arjun, he begins this particular section of the Gita, the second chapter, by telling, both you and me, we have lived for always. Natve vaham jatunasham, natve neme janadipa. He says, both you and me, we have lived in the past, we're living in the present, and we'll continue living in the future. Krishna begins the Gita with this concept. There is no start and there is no end. Life is eternal. So why do the Puranic stories, if you study all our scriptures, all our scriptures talk about, stories of the past. Like if you're taking a story of Narad Muni, it'll suddenly tell you in the past life Narad Muni was this. Taking the story of Chitraketu Maharaj, suddenly it'll tell you in the past life he was this. Now, why does the Vedic scriptures keep going to past life and telling stories of the past? Talk about Karna, there's a story. He was Sahasra Kavach in his previous life. You talk about Duryodhan, there is a previous. So every person that we talk about in the Vedic scriptures, there is a story of the past. Talk about Ravan, he had a story, a backstory. So why do the scriptures talk about backstories and past life stories? Simple. Today who you are is determined by who you were in the past. So therefore, life is not an Olympic race that we have to win. Most of us, we are programmed to think that life is an Olympic race. From the day we begin our lives, first standard, second standard, third standard, all our life we are just running, isn't it? When did we get introduced to schools, to races in school? From our first standard itself, isn't it? First standard kids running to win a race. And then by the time you're in 10th standard, you're really, in a massive rat race. I have to get into IITs and I have to get into this, there's limited seats. And so we are introduced to the idea of an Olympic competition, of a race that we have to win. When you live only once, the value of your life becomes the sum total of all your achievements. Whatever you have achieved in your entire life, that is the value of your life. At the end of your life, what is your value? What is your net worth? 50 crores. That's all. That's your net worth. What is your achievement? That much you have achieved. Is that all that a human being is worth? Is that all that life is meant for? So the moment you understand, or the moment you think that you live only once and you are after achievements, the focus becomes control. I want to control everybody. I want to control everything. I want to control my life. I want to make a perfect plan so that when I retire, I have this much amount of money. But when you live many lives, achievements become meaningless. In my past life also, I did, degrees. In my past life also, I must have achieved a lot of money. In my past life also, I would have owned a bungalow or a house or a car. Who is using those now? Can you claim? In my past life, I worked so hard and I earned 100 crore. How come I can't use it in my next life? There was a very miserly guy who died. And he was a very, very fabulously rich man. But he didn't want to leave all his money behind. He told his wife, when I die, make sure you put all my money in the coffin. And he died. His wife put a check in the coffin. Encash it in your next life. So the moment you understand that you have many lives, achievements become meaningless. And what matters is wisdom. What matters is the understanding of life that you carry with you. The understanding why we exist in this world. The understanding that who we are. The understanding that why do I come again and again. The understanding that why do I have to keep coming again and again. These questions become more relevant the moment we understand that we have many lives. So instead of engaging and being entrapped in this constant cycle, the goal becomes to find a way to get liberated. So rebirth is actually a second chance for us. I made a mistake in my past. I've lived a life in a particular way and I've reached the present situation of life. Now, do I want to continue the same cycle and I take another birth again and do the same things again, right? Or do I want to find an enhanced way of looking at life, an enhanced way of living life, a more meaningful way by which I can get out of this cycle of birth and death? So either you can choose the path of rebirth, or you can choose to embark on the path of realization. The choice is ours. It depends on us what we want to do and how we want to deal with it. So Arjun at this point in time, he was getting to a point where he was becoming very fearful. And where was that fear coming from? The fear was coming from some things that were there inside his psyche. All of us, we have some fears inside us. And these fears prevent us from facing our realities. These fears prevent us from looking at life more clearly and more objectively and more deeply. All the behavior that we do in our life is due to some underlying fears that we have inside us. And so, what we do is whenever we are faced with certain fears that we don't have the answers to, we don't know how to handle it, we put on some masks. We put on some, you know, um, we put on some masks that make us seem strong. We call this as smiling faces and crying hearts. In this world, the world is full of smiling faces. I mean, why do you find people doing a dancing reel and 5 minutes later committing suicide? Fascinating, isn't it? Smiling and dancing. I mean, usually, do you dance before dying? Or do you dance before ending your life? Nobody does that. We're living such an artificial world. We're living in such an artificial life that we don't have the guts to face our fears because we don't know how to face our fears. And that's why Arjun's discussion with Krishna in the beginning of the Gita is very important because Arjun is showing us the way to face our fears. He's opening up to Krishna and telling Krishna, I am scared of this war. I don't know how to fight. I don't know what to do. Here are two of my greatest fears in standing in front of me, my achievements and my emotional connections. And I don't know how to face them because I know both of them are wrong. But I don't have the guts to fight them and I don't have the guts to tell them that you're wrong. So we are all put in different bodies. Why do we get these bodies? These bodies are like masks in one sense. Every life we take on a different mask. Some masks are very confident masks. Some masks are very, timid masks, right? So we all take on these masks, and we become so attached to these masks that we have fears of letting them go. We have fears of, thinking that probably we are beyond these masks, and we are not ready to face and understand something deeper. So Krishna begins the Bhagavad Gita with this discussion, telling Arjun, you are not the body, you are the spirit soul. What that discussion does to Arjun, in fact, what that discussion does to all of us, the first thing it does, it pulls the rug off your feet. The very identity that you have been standing on, the very identity that you have built all your life, the very identity that the world is telling you that this is what you are, Krishna pulls that off Arjun's leg. And Krishna tells him, hey, you are thinking that you are the grandson of Bhishma? In your previous life, you were somebody else's grandson. In your next life, you will be somebody else's grandson. What are you talking about? This body is temporary. You don't be attached to this body. Krishna just tells him that concept. And so there is an immediate problem that Arjuna is facing, right? That he has to, face two of the people that he loves the most. But Krishna doesn't address that immediate problem. He goes and talks about a concept which is so high that it not only solves Arjun's immediate problem, it solves Arjun's all problems. So the Bhagavad Gita does not believe in solving your present day problems. And you say, I don't have children, what do I do? I don't have a job, what do I do? I don't have a wife, what do I do? I don't have a house, what? Bhagavad Gita doesn't address these problems at all. Bhagavad Gita goes much higher and helps you look at life so differently that once you understand that way of life, all these problems won't matter to you at all. And these problems won't be real problems to you at all because you are dealing with something much more complex and much more important, which is identifying who you really are.